stock value, and they're not good for your executives. So those folks also have interests. In the case of some sorts of systems, government officials, voters, and regulators are stakeholders as well. Not for all of us, but for some of us working in, say, regulated industries or industries that serve public sector. Of course, the users are stakeholders. We shouldn't forget them. Vendors of software or systems that will be included in our applications, integrated, those are also stakeholders. And in some cases with you have customers who are paying the bills. In other cases, you have sponsors, but somebody's paying for the project to happen and essentially paying for the testing to be done. So they are also a stakeholder. And then public and society in the case of safety critical systems. Now, not every project has every one of these groups as stakeholders, but this is a good place to start when you start thinking about, well, who are my stakeholders? Who should I be delivering something of value to? I think that's the first step in really understanding how we go about delivering value and satisfying our stakeholders. If you don't know who you're supposed to be satisfying, it's a fairly good bet that you're not satisfying everyone. Now, stakeholders. Each stakeholder has some specific set of interests in the testing. That's what makes them a stakeholder. If they don't have any interest in the testing at all, then they're not stakeholders in the testing. Now, they might not know that they have an interest in it, but anybody who is interested in the quality of the deliverables put into production, for example, is a stakeholder in testing, because testing is part of how quality in production happens. So you need to understand, well, what's the interest? Got a potential stakeholder, what's their interest? And then you got to ask yourself, what kind of stakeholder is this? Because there's basically three types of stakeholders in terms of one form of classification, which is what's their motivation. Most stakeholders want testing and the project as a whole to succeed. That's in their best interest, that the testing be successful, at least as they define successful in their mind, and the project be successful in the sense that it's finished pretty much on time, pretty much on budget, with a quality deliverable that has the features that are needed in it. So that's going to be common for most testing stakeholders, and indeed most project stakeholders. Now, in some cases, you will have neutral stakeholders. So an example of a neutral stakeholder is a regulator. At least we would hope that they would be neutral. So if you're creating a safety critical system, like an airplane, or you're creating medical software, then there are regulators that regulate that, and they should be neutral. Now, I've read some interesting emails about some people at the FAA who has sort of adopted this "we're not happy till you're unhappy" attitude, was the way one of them put it. One would hope that that's actually not the way the regulators would think about it, nor should the regulator think about their job as "we're not happy unless you're happy." Right? The regulator really should be neutral and objective. They're there to serve the public interest, and as such, they are not going to deliberately sabotage your product or project, but if they feel that they are obliged by the nature of their job to do something that that impedes or perhaps even terminates your project, they will do it. So that's a neutral stakeholder. Now, every now and then you will run into the actual inimical stakeholder, the anti-stakeholder, the person whose interest is actually in the failure of the testing and the failure of the project. They want to see the project come to a halt. This can happen for various reasons. I had this once on a project where one of the people who was involved in the project, they were managing a legacy system that was going to be used as a back end to this product when it went live. And obviously, it's going to be much reduced in its scope and usage, and a lot of the people were going to have to kind of go away. They weren't very happy about this, as you can imagine. So all sorts of interesting things happen, like there would be quote-unquote scheduled downtime on the system right in the middle of us trying to run tests without any notification. You know, so clearly efforts being made to sabotage the project. Ultimately, the project actually did fail, but not because of the anti-stakeholders, though I'm sure that the anti-stakeholders were quite pleased with that outcome when it occurred. That's an extreme case, and I would hope that most of you on your projects day by day have no interaction with these kind of malignant influences, but they can be out there, and it's important to understand when you're looking at your stakeholders. Okay, we have positive stakeholders, we have neutral stakeholders, we have negative stakeholders. You know, which category do our stakeholders fit into? Hopefully, none of them fit into the negative category. You might have some that are neutral, you might not. Obviously, it's the best when all of the stakeholders are positive stakeholders, because they all want you to succeed, and they're going to be very happy to work with you. Obviously, we would hope they would be happy to work with you to clearly define the objectives that they have and some metrics that you can use to measure how well you're meeting those objectives, so that you can do a better job of meeting those objectives. So we have to identify the stakeholders, we have to identify their interests, otherwise we're not going to be able to deliver value to those stakeholders. Okay, so stakeholders have interests in the testing, and as a result, they have some set of objectives and expectations. And they want these objectives achieved and the expectations fulfilled in a effective, efficient, and elegant fashion. Now, that's not necessarily all clear to them. And what I mean by that is that the objectives might not be clear, the expectations might not be clear, or even if they are clear, they might not be realistic. What it would mean to do something effectively, efficiently, and elegantly, again, may very well not be clear to individual stakeholders. In fact, if you've never gone through the exercise that I'm outlining here of working with your stakeholders to determine what they're looking for from you, it is a strong chance, I wouldn't call it a certainty, but a very strong chance that one or more of your stakeholders has some very significant clarity and reality issues associated with their objectives and expectations. Now, nonetheless, if these are mostly positive stakeholders and your relationship with them from a business point of view is positive as well at the time that you're working through this process, they should be happy to work with you to articulate their objectives and expectations, and to the extent that that's kind of an iterative process that involves some amount of brainstorming, they should be willing to do that. It's certainly not fair for somebody, a peer, let's say you're a test manager, and a peer-level manager, to say to you, if you go and say, I'd like to talk to you about your objectives and expectations related to testing so that I can do a better job of fulfilling those in an effective, efficient, and elegant manner, it would certainly not be fair for that peer to say, I'm not going to tell you that. You have to figure that out yourself. Then such a person who said such a thing should really have no grounds for complaint later when they're unarticulated